Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the faker's gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Why is this here?
Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
All right. We're coming to you live from Adam's basement, which has a pool now. It's not a raffle prize, by the way.
If you're a video listener,
Not yet.
There is a giant inflatable pool right behind me in the basement, and
Yeah.
it's there. That's what that is. Just wanted you to know.
Has a lot of Adam's life force in it.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I feel like I no longer have that life force. Like it's gone from me forever.
Well, it's over there.
But I'm never getting it back.
No, it's there in that pool. He blew that up like with his own lungs. Just kind of insane. I've never done anything that important.
I'm not gonna say that it was the best decision I ever made.
Was it the worst?
Probably.
Okay. Was it the last? That's the find out next time on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
Speaking of next time on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
Oh yeah.
Next episode is going to be a mini-sode. It's going to be the Q&A episode. By the time you're hearing this, all of the answers to the questions will be recorded. But to the people who have already submitted questions and the people who submitted questions last time, thank you for that. We're going to answer a lot of them, and that'll be next episode, which will be a mini-sode. A little note: that episode is actually going to be published 3 days early. Normally we publish on Tuesdays, but this one's going to be published on Saturday, in like the mid-afternoon Eastern time. The reason for that will be revealed to you when that episode airs. It'll be in the episode. Can't share it right now. Suffice it to say, I'm going to do a thing. I mean, obviously, you don't have to listen to it then. If it's part of your Wednesday ritual to listen to the podcast, by all means, wait for it. But I'm going to do a thing, and you can follow that thing live, and there will be details next episode. And if you would like to do that, I certainly encourage you to do it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. There's a really good chance he's gonna live through it too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I meant to say.
I mean, there's a good chance of both, right?
Yeah, actually, there's a non-zero chance that both of those things will happen.
Yeah. Well, not both. One of the two. Either one.
It's gonna be. Well, actually, yeah. It's unlikely that I will both live through it and die.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely, but not impossible.
Schrodinger's cat is a thing. Anyway.
Well, I knew a guy in high school who was declared legally dead.
Oh, nice.
He was like, "Oh, hi everyone, it's my death day," and then he got to tell the story about how, on this day I was declared legally dead. But obviously he wasn't dead.
Cake on your death day?
I don't know. Probably.
I would
want
hope so.
I would want a cake on my death day more than on my birthday, really.
Yeah, I mean, maybe on your birthday you get like angel's food cake. On your death day you get like devil's food cake.
That's quality. That's really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, if you're listening to this and you've been declared legally dead and you're not doing that, what are you doing?
And
you were given a second chance.
Section.
You should be having cake.
You should be having cake twice as often, at least,
than
if you hadn't been declared legally dead.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say I will be off the grid for a lot of that time, so interaction, maybe a little bit low, but also the following episode may also be a mini-sode. It's unclear when I will be available again, and also, like, I don't know, we might take a break. It might be a little too soon after. I might have to... Anyway, not positive when the next regular episode will be, but, we'll keep you posted as to what's going on, and that kind of thing. Also,
for sure.
That's pretty cool.
Oh. On this episode, we are going to talk a little bit about Paige, yeah?
Yeah, and also the other things that go with it.
Yeah, not just Paige, yeah.
And I think we entitled this episode, Paige to Champion Bickering.
Yeah.
So I just want you to know it's going to get real on this episode.
Yeah. Well, fists all bloody. I mean, we did have some stuff to disagree on, but in the end, I think they're kind of topical points.
Yeah, I actually am already bleeding, so, I mean, I'm really getting into the theme of this episode.
Yeah, that's true. Why are you bleeding?
I don't know. I was scratching my leg, and then all of a sudden there was blood on my hand.
Well, I think we can
sick.
put 2 and 2 together. But, so before we get into Paige, it's worth talking a little bit about last episode, which was Remake, because we played a kingdom that had a remake in it, and we gave our analysis at the time, and now we'll talk about how our games of that kingdom went.
Sure. So, this kingdom had Chariot Race, Ghost Town, Golem, Port, Remake, Haunted Woods, Jester, Mystic, Wine Merchant, Horde, and it also had Expedition. One more time for our audio-only listeners. Chariot Race, Ghost Town, Golem, Port, Remake, Haunted Woods, Jester, Mystic, Wine Merchant, Horde, and finally Expedition.
So, we talked a little bit about at the end, we both agreed Remake is quite good. We both agreed that you are going to be using Ports and Haunted Woods to draw a bunch of cards. By the end of it, we both agreed Jester was quite good, and you probably have a Wine Merchant, and you probably have a Horde. Almost certainly have a Horde. And you are just provincing. And you can
do good stuff.
Yeah, you can threaten double province because you've got the Wine Merchant, you've got a lot of payload and a lot of card draw, but you don't necessarily get there because your opponent is probably mirroring you, provincing along with you, and it tends to just be a race to who can get up and running faster with a competent deck that won't stall.
Sure. I mean, that's like most games of Dominion, really.
Yeah, a lot of
the
the
time. Take out the specific card names and just...
And how many games you have, and yeah.
Yeah, if you just take out all the details.
Yeah.
That's basically every game in Dominion.
Yeah, you can just copy-paste. It's a mad lib.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, man, Dominion's gotten really boring, hasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
So
I think we both agreed you open with a remake, right?
Yeah, we both agreed you open remake, and we both agreed that a 4-3 was a lot better than a 3-4 because you can get remake plus something. Now, on a 3-4, you don't have either of the options we were talking about. On a 3-4, I think we said you're going to take Silver Remake.
Yeah.
The only other option would be Chariot Race Remake,
That's
which is
garbage.
Bad because Chariot Race is a bad card to open with. It just
it's
doesn't do anything.
Bad
for
card,
you.
but anyway.
We'll
talk about that on the
yeah,
mythical
whatever.
future Chariot Race episode.
Or Ghost Town Remake, which is even worse because that causes your remake to miss the shuffle.
Not bueno.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leaves you with like Silver Remake. Not that great, but you want to be opening 4-3 so you can get Remake plus.
That's a thing.
Yeah, and we disagree a little bit on what that thing is, but Adam says Ghost Town. Yeah. I say Expedition.
Yeah, so on the video of the games, we get into a little bit of a spirited discussion about what is better. I say some numbers. Jake doesn't like numbers, so he was not convinced. We still don't agree on this, and it's unfortunate we didn't really get much of a chance where both of us got a 4-3.
Yeah, we really could not make that happen.
I mean, it is kind of unlikely. It's
Yeah, but for how many times we specifically tried to make it happen, is it unlikely that it never does?
It's a 1 in 9 that we both get it. I don't even think we tried 9 times.
Okay, well, sure,
Rip in
whatever.
peace.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think that the reason I like getting the Ghost Town is because you get to play it on turn 2, you gain it to hand, and then you have 11 cards in your deck that don't miss the shuffle because the Ghost Town misses, right? So you're going to have 6 cards on turn 3, 5 cards on turn 4. Your remake is guaranteed to be in one of those hands, and then, it doesn't miss the shuffle. So you don't have any of those issues where, like, let's say you had to open Silver Remake, you don't run the risk of the remake missing the shuffle because it was one of the last 2 cards. Now granted, if that happens to you, turn 3, you're probably getting an Expedition just to shore up that chance, because it is a huge disaster to have your remake miss the shuffle, right?
It's pretty bad, although I think we disagree on how bad. We both agree it's bad.
For turn 5. On turn 5,
yeah.
It's really bad to have not played your remake till turn 5. That's what I should have said.
Okay,
I'm trying.
It's bad. It's
talking
bad.
about common ground here.
So, like, yes, common ground. Part of the reason I don't think it's as bad as Adam thinks it is, and it is bad. It's bad. But I'm getting a second remake anyway, so I'm trying to make up for that by just having more remake plays by having the two. Don't get me wrong, this is putting me in a worse spot. I'm not, like, saying it isn't. I'm just saying I'm not, like, out because I'm going to thin pretty quickly once I get those two remakes anyway.
Yeah, but it sucks, man.
It sucks.
I hate that.
I'm not arguing. It's bad. It's the pits. But anyway,
Anyway, yeah, and Jake, you wanted to open with an expedition, right?
Okay. So here, here's why I like the expedition more. It's obviously drawing an extra card over the ghost town, and the reason that is important to me is I really want to maximize the chance that I'm playing my remake on turn 3, not turn 4. It does give you a little bit of a difference because it's causing a shuffle with fewer cards in it. Also, it is maximizing the chance that I get to trash 2 estates with my remake and gain 3 costs. Those 3 costs are most likely ghost towns, which become card draw for the next turn, which make it more likely that I play my remake again on the following turn, or at least within that shuffle. So it's just it's a tempo thing, and also so what am I left with buying the ghost town? It's the fact that I then have a ghost town in my deck, and I don't look at that as a plus really because the ghost town's not a great card for the deck. Early on, it's okay.
We argued about this. That line of reasoning doesn't hold up.
Well,
it would hold up if you weren't voluntarily gaining ghost towns afterward.
That's
why.
That's what I mean. That's my compensation is that I'd be getting a ghost town the other way, and I'm saying I don't really value getting the ghost town. I'll take the ghost town later.
I'm not getting the ghost town because I think it's a good card for the deck long term.
Sure.
Haunted Woods is like a hard counter to other night cards, and it's there.
Yeah.
And part of what you're doing is definitely getting Haunted Woods online as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So there will come a time where your ghost towns are no good anymore, and you just remake them, right? That's definitely a thing that happens, and Ghost Town is bad at that point. And I think both of us are getting ghost towns before that happens because of its immediate benefit, right?
Yeah.
So I actually don't think there's a huge amount of disagreement there. I think what it boils down to is, Jake, your strategy has a potential to have a very good draw, right?
Yeah.
And you described that good draw. Remake turn 3, more likely to hit estates, cause the shuffle, maybe even find the remake again turn 4.
And the remake on turn 4 is not... I think that's... Even if you turn both those estates into ghost towns, is it 50-50? Because...
If you manage to find 2 estates on turn 3, turn them both into ghost towns, and you had your remake in turn 3. If you have all that, then finding the remake again turn 4 is 60% likely.
Okay,
you have a 3 and 5 of drawing that remake. So, if all of these things happen for you, you're doing very well.
Yeah.
If on the other hand, you do have a 4 and 11 chance of not finding a remake turn 3, in which case you are worse off than if you had opened with a ghost town. And I think we agree on that. And so
how much worse?
The chance,
Probably.
well, I mean, there's right, how much better on the high roll versus how much worse on the low roll, and then also what are the relative chances of that? Now, a lot of I think this is close, right? Because the chances of your high roll are roughly the same as the chances of your low roll.
Yeah.
And also the difference it makes when you get your high roll versus the difference it makes when you get your low roll. Now, it's kind of hard to say, but...
That's when the conversation gets softer, right? We get away from hard numbers and more toward personal preference when we talk about, qualitative differences between where that leaves you and also tolerance for risk.
Do you auto win when you high roll? Do you auto lose when you low roll? I don't think the answer to either of those is yes. But what is the percentage, and who really gives a crap at that point?
So in the end, I think both Ghost Town and Expedition are both reasonable options for sure. They're both options that give you a benefit. You're opening remake with one of them, and we disagree on which one is better, but the same thought process is getting us to both of them.
Right, the goals are, right, you want to play Remake as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so, I have this idea that, and so this is actually a point of disagreement from the last episode. I had this idea that you can use the cycling tools here. Yes, I said cycling because that's a word that totally makes sense to describe it. I wanted to play my one Remake as often as possible. And, your opening buys are definitely geared towards that. However, Jake said that in situations where you have 4, and it's, maybe turn 5 or earlier, so early enough for it to matter, you would get a second Remake, and I said, I'm a little more likely to get a port, because I didn't think that the potential upside of being able to play the second Remake so you can thin faster was worth the potential downside of, they collided, and I have to remake my Remake, and I wish I would have bought a port, because now at least I get a free port out of the deal.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And that was my stance, and Jake was like, no, it's worth it for the chance to play the Remake more often, right?
Yeah.
And so, that was a point of disagreement last time. After playing the games, I actually think on this kingdom, the second Remake is worth it. And so I'm going to say Jake had that one. I don't think getting ports early on does enough for you. I don't think the free port makes enough of an impact that I'm willing to pass up the potential of playing the Remake again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant benefit. The one time that I did get the second Remake and got screwed for it, it did hurt. Because I collided them and I didn't have a ghost town to play. The other thing in favor of the second Remake here is that if you know that they're both about to come up in the shuffle, you can get a ghost town. Now, the way that it screws you over is if you draw them near the top of a shuffle and they collided and you didn't have a ghost town. So then you're a little screwed. But there's a lot of ways to mitigate the collision, and
or maybe you wanted to get something other than a ghost town. I mean,
well, it forces you to get a ghost town, and that's not good. But meh.
I think all things considered, it's a risk worth taking. In my mind, I don't like the opening expedition risk. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's a mistake, right? It's close enough that I don't think it's a mistake either way. However, I would never ever do that opening. Because I would just never do it, right?
I would, because YOLO. But okay. Here's the thing, and I said this, and I say this earlier, again later in my outline too. This is contentious as a point, but in my mind, it's a game that has luck in it, and to win the game, a lot of the time you have to take risks. And don't get me wrong, there are different tolerances for risk. There are good risks and bad risks when we're talking about maximizing your win rate. But I tend toward making the risky play.
He likes to YOLO it.
Yeah, I tend toward making the risky play that has a payoff, because my logic is that if that play is more efficient with the risk, and then my opponent could go for it, and then if I don't go for it, I'm relying on their bad luck to carry me.
So when you make that risky play, even whether or not it pays off, do you get that squirt of dopamine in your brain that triggers the reward center?
I used to, but now I don't feel anything. But that has a lot more to do with me being dead inside. But Dominion's pretty cool. No, no. So I mean, the highs and the lows are great, but I mean, usually you just make the play that's going to maximize your win rate. I just tend toward thinking that play involves a higher risk, but
sure. The final thing I wanted to say here is last time we both talked about Chariot Race and how much it mattered. And
I think we were.
And God, I forgot how bad of a card Chariot Race is.
It's not good.
You don't
really
win,
unreliable.
You don't win Chariot Races, okay? That's not a thing that happens.
This was a classic case of the Chariot Race not being worse than nothing, but being pretty much the same as nothing.
It's nothing. It's the same thing as nothing.
I mean, sometimes you did win Chariot Races, and so when Chariot Race is good, and we'll save some of this for the future Mythical Chariot Race episode. When Chariot Race is good, it's because you can get a bunch of them and threaten to have a turn where you win a bunch of them and get a bunch of free points with it. And that's not really the case here, because there's so much draw and so much gains and pressure to end the game with like more than the 2 or 3 points that the chariot races can get you in the meantime.
What, we were not getting 2 to 3 points.
Yeah,
We were getting
even if you
0 or 1.
Yeah, even if you did have like 2 or 3. I mean, even if you had gotten a bunch of points, you could have taken a silver instead, which is a strong play because
silver's a really good card.
Well, like the edge that chariot race would have over the silver is if you would have trouble drawing the silver, but you don't. There's plenty of draw here, plenty of thinning. So yeah, the chariot race just didn't see play, and I thought the chariot race was going to be better because we had these thin decks with hordes in them, so we have thin decks with expensive cards in them because provinces and
But
golds.
your opponent has thin deck with expensive cards.
Yeah, that's true, but like that it's more likely to have that one turn where the opponent ends up with a crappy card on top, and you get to play a bunch of chariot races and get points.
Oh, but Jake, I can play one chariot race to test the waters, and then if I don't like what my opponent had, I can play a Jester! I can do it again!
Okay, so none of that panned out in practice.
If you're getting that many chariot races, your opponent has already won the game. Because chariot race is a bad card.
Bad card.
Yeah, I said it.
Overrated card 100%. I'm with
Bad
you.
card. It's a bad card.
Okay, so back to this kingdom, though.
It's pretty bad here.
Yeah, I think it's worse than Silver and Ghost Town. A lot of the time you would take a Ghost Town for the immediate benefit, or you take...
but if they already had our Haunted Woods out, and, like, maybe you didn't want a Silver, like, yeah, I mean, get it. I guess.
Sure. I mean, like...
it's like getting nothing.
Woo! Yeah, woo! So, I mean...
Hotness.
But you could take an Expedition, and, like, how often is that not the best
Yeah,
thing you could do?
Yeah, but if you're gaining it off a remake, you can't gain an Expedition.
It depends on a lot. So...
But if it was Experiment, you could.
Yeah, there we go. Now, Jester. Jester and Haunted Woods.
Jester's a really good card here.
Yeah, Jester was really interesting. I mean, it junks your opponent a little bit, which slows them down a tiny bit, but really, I mean, it gains stuff for you, and payload is kind of tight, so yeah, Jester does a lot of everything you need.
Yeah.
Your opponent has a bunch of expensive cards and a thin deck, so eventually you're getting good stuff with it. I played a few games where I just saw, like, hey, what if I just skip Jester and just go straight for the Haunted Woods and the Wine Merchants and the ports? And that was not...
You won by less than what you would have if you gotten the Jester.
Yeah, it wasn't, like...
I wasn't getting the second remake at that point, so I was getting owned.
Yeah, skipping Jester didn't seem damning, but it was worse. So the Jester's first 5 definitely sped things up a good deal.
Yes.
After that, I think every 5 is Haunted Woods until you have 2 out every turn, or one or 2 out.
It's like for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you've got 1 or 2 out every turn, and then you start adding possibly a second Jester, probably just Wine Merchants, depends. A Horde.
Or you get a Duchy.
Well, you could.
Yeah.
Which you might do if you have a Horde out. And
there you go.
$7 and a Wine Merchant out.
Yep.
And you need to call your Wine Merchant? Sure.
Yep. Happened.
Whatever. Oh, yeah, that did happen to you. Yeah.
It's actually pretty good when you're uncontested if you're drawing a whole bunch, because then you can remake the Duchy if you like just want to shove payload in the deck. Yeah. It's actually not bad.
So. All right, sure. Yeah. I mean, in a vacuum, I'm sure it's not, but in a real game where your opponent
you're never
going
to overdraw enough to make use of it.
You're on a clock. This kingdom's going to end pretty soon. Okay. So, yeah, that was that kingdom.
Yeah. All right.
Neato.
Let's talk about Page.
Yeah, Page. Page.
So,
should we... No, we're gonna read it.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to read every card in the Page. I think we can read
not
Page.
Right away for sure.
We can read Page and Champion, and then we can kind of describe the things in between as we go.
Yeah, sure. So you read Page.
Okay, so Page is a 2-cost action from the Adventures expansion. It is a cantrip, meaning the top text is +1 card, +1 action. When you discard this from play, you may exchange it for a treasure hunter. It is keyword action traveler. Traveler is this keyword that Adventures introduced, where these cards, quote unquote, level up as you play them. So you play it once and it's a treasure hunter. You play the treasure hunter, it turns into a warrior. You play the warrior, it turns into a hero, and then you play the hero and it turns into a champion. And all these cards do different things.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and read champion now, because we read the beginning. Let's read what you're building up to eventually. What is this page going to grow up and be one day?
So the champion, it's a 6-cost action duration.
The cost is whatever, because you can't buy it.
Well, yeah. It says +1 action, and it says for the rest of the game, when another player plays an attack, it doesn't affect you. And when you play an action, +1 action. And then there's a reminder this stays in play, and this is not on the supply. So for the rest of the game, you can just throw out 2 of the mechanics of Dominion that make it a fun game. Limited actions and interaction with your opponent in the form of attacks. And you can just say, we are done with that for this game, and now let's play a worse game. Oh, sorry. Was that my opinion coming through? Ouch. Sorry. Page isn't really my favorite card, and it's mostly because of Champion. Anyway, we'll whine about that later.
Yeah. So, like, on the one hand, I want to say, like, we should get to the strategy content first, and we should talk about things that are objectively true, but on the other hand...
It's objectively true that this annoys me.
On the other hand, I agree with everything you said.
Alright, I'm being a little harsh.
Yeah, this is one of the first cards we've covered that we both really hate. Like, this is not... I mean, don't get me wrong. I've played a ton with this card because I play on ladder with full random. I have to play with this card, whether I like it or not.
It is not on my familiar cards list. It is not in my Dominion box that I travel with.
It's not... Yeah, I mean, this... Okay, so here's what I will say. This aspect of you play... Like... Adventures introduced a few mechanics like this. They're like flashy and impressive, and unique.
And like the first few times you play with it, it's fun.
The first couple of games you play with Paige, it's like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like, it's telling a story. It's this Paige who grows up to be a treasure hunter and then a warrior, and eventually she's a champion. She's done so well for herself.
Defending the city from anyone who could possibly attack you for the remainder of time.
And for that reason, I do like to bring it out for newer players to the game. And Adam doesn't agree with that because it's a lot of text, but, it depends on the player. But after that, I kind of never want to touch it again. I don't love this card.
It is 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to ask consent first.
I think we're both going to put aside our feelings, though, and just talk about what we think about the card from a strategic standpoint, yeah?
Yeah, at least until we start whining about it again.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that'll happen, don't worry.
Yeah.
The thing is, Paige is an extremely powerful game-warping card. It is one of those cards, in addition to being one of those, like, theme cards, it's also extremely powerful and something that, like, new players need to understand that, like, you usually need to go for.
That's because of Champion.
Because of Champion, yeah. In fact, like, you're going to start out with the assumption that you're going for Paige on any given board. In fact, you're going to start out with the assumption that you're opening Paige. It's that important to get started. And not opening with a Paige is kind of like a bit of a non-standard approach to any given kingdom. You need to have a reason not to do that. You need to understand, why am I not opening Paige? That, like, the onus is that you're going to be doing that, and anything else requires some pretty strong justification.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. Like, the Champion, I think, is powerful enough, and we'll get into a little more detail later, but, like, most games are decided by who gets their Champion out first.
In a lot of ways.
And so, opening Paige, you have to play the Paige, get the Treasure Hunter, play the Treasure Hunter, get the Warrior, play the... You have to go through that whole process, and so one of the best ways to get your Champion out soon is to start that process sooner.
Yeah. And so, the Champion... that's one reason, is that Champion is so powerful. Champion doesn't just break the game. Champion bends the game over its knee and shatters it into a million pieces, and then sets those pieces on fire, and then the fire out.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Champion does to the game.
It's that's like the
it's
whole
a
Traveler
completely
line. There's
different-
Treasure Hunter, take it over the knee, Warrior breaks it, Hero sets it on fire. Oh. Wow, that actually could work. I'll work that into my next fanfic.
Yeah. The next fan. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, about half the time, like, you go for a page because Champion is so busted. And the only times that Champion, like, isn't super busted, usually, is when you're looking at a very bland, money-ish single-gain kingdom. And guess what? The page line is pretty good for that, too, because it's gaining treasures and giving you money. So you end up getting page pretty often for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So which one of these bad boys you want to talk about first? Besides Paige, I think we covered Paige herself.
Well, I think we can probably talk about Champion next, because that's, like, the other end of this, and, like, that's the significant part of it.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about the other stuff in between as we go, because that's more about execution.
Cool.
The rest of the Traveler line.
Okay. So why don't we start with the things that we don't hotly disagree on?
Okay. So we both agree that the Page Champion tree is this, like, the concept of a village just doesn't exist anymore.
Champion is a village.
It is a village,
it's what
but
it is.
Like, it's effectively, it's not, it's the way that it goes about being a village is like, villages don't exist anymore, actions don't exist anymore. You're just playing cards now.
You just throw them on the table. It's like we've changed this into a game of Slay the Spire, where you just start like AFK clicking cards.
Yeah, except I think even the most like mindless Slay the Spire run, like let's say you're playing the defect with like power spam and you get to play a bunch of cards every turn. I think even that requires more thought than a champion deck.
Wow. All right.
But so I would say that the Page Champion tree puts the game on a somewhat predictable clock, a very visible one, I'd say. So the Page Champion tree elongates the game because you can build a lot with Page and Champion, and it takes some time to like get the Champion out, which Adam said earlier. The Travelers are just slow to cycle in, and the Page tree actually adds cards to your deck, so it's even slower than that. But the Champion is such an accelerant at the end that it careens to a halt pretty quickly. So, in other words, I think that the early, middle, and end game of a page board are pretty clearly delineated by where people are in their Page Champion trees.
It kind of reminds me of that song by Taylor Swift, Red.
Yeah.
It's like driving a new Maserati down a dead-end street.
Yeah. It's just like
It's just like that,
The
yeah.
Page is the Maserati, and
It's
Champion
It's
is...
like trying to solve a crossword and realizing there's no right answer.
Yeah, exactly. Realizing that the crossword's in Russian or something. Okay,
Yeah.
So... Yeah, I mean, in other words, once the Champion comes out, the game is pretty close to ending, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just like the song. So, yeah, I would... I mean, Champion does two things.
Yeah.
It gives you infinite actions. It gives you the defense. Infinite actions... it's really great.
It's extremely powerful, yeah.
Like, you probably want it.
Yeah.
You can do some really cool stuff. Like, you can build some really good decks.
Yeah.
Where you're able to just play all your action cards.
I mean,
You could probably make a religion out of that, right?
Yeah.
Anyone? Bill Wirtz? History of the... No?
Is
this thing on? No? Okay, never mind. What were you saying?
Well, I would say that a deck with Champion is playing a different game than a deck without Champion. And
yeah, it's no longer Dominion. Sorry.
Well, like, cards are just different. And, like, you build cards in a different way. Like, Smithy is a very different card to it. It's not just, like, better or whatever. It's like, Smithy is, like, not the same card.
Yeah, like, remember...
to a deck that has Champion.
Remember the first time you were looking through the base set cards and you saw Village and you saw Smithy and you're like, wait a second. What if I play a Village and then a Smithy? That would be amazing! Right?
Yeah.
Well, if you have a Champion out, it's kind of like every time you played a Smithy, you had a Village to go with it.
Nice.
It's amazing!
Yeah.
It's so good. So like a lot of cards in Dominion were balanced around the idea that if it takes an action away from you, it can be a lot more powerful because it took an action away from you. And we actually talked about that in the Lost Arts episode, and it's very similar, right? The champion just does it for all the piles for you.
Right.
So a lot of the synergies that the Lost Arts has, like the draw cards that were terminal, champion certainly likes.
Yeah, I mean, terminal draw in particular, but terminal payload as well. I'd say draw is like at the top of the list. Our terminals in general.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, terminals in general just tend to be really good on a champion board, just because of, again, how the cards are balanced, because they tend to be doing like more stuff than their non-terminal counterparts would.
Sure. I think that, yes, draw cards, they get a lot better. In fact, even the definition that I have for draw is, fundamentally changed when you never decrease the number of actions you have remaining, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the big things that limited draw. And so, champion as a village is very good at that. It helps that. And so, draw is definitely towards the top of the list. There is actually something I think that is higher on the list when I'm looking for what does champion want to be around in order to make it really good, right? What kind of things can I do to support champion? And I think the thing on top of that on the list is some kind of payload, right? So like extra buys or some other thing that I can do with my turn that's more than just like, oh, I have a bunch of money and I buy a province.
So you're talking about payload in excess of a single gain. You're talking about either extra gains. I'm assuming you're including VP chips as well, right? Which is why you didn't say extra gains.
Really, any payload in addition to I play a bunch of money and I buy a province.
Yeah.
So that could be I play a bunch of attacks on you every turn. Hey, look, there's an attack in the line that we'll get to later. So like you could play a bunch of those warriors.
Okay, that's true enough, except that the champion is immunizing you to that. But that means you have to go for champion. So yeah.
Sure. What I'm saying is that it does matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a two-player game, we have to think about things as if they're uncontested.
Yeah.
Right? And assuming that it's good enough to go for when uncontested, then you go for it. And then in a mirror, things change. Things get weird.
Yeah.
But it's really, I'm really just looking for good payload. Without some sort of decent payload in the kingdom that's doing that, a lot of times I fall back on the money density paradigm, and as you mentioned, a lot of times I'm stopping at hero there because now the champion isn't really increasing. How much can it really increase the output of my turn?
It depends on what's in there,
well,
but
when the output can never get better than one province per turn, I actually know of a deck that gets to one province per turn pretty well.
Yeah, this is true.
And that deck really likes to have a hero.
Yeah, Hero is quite a good card for like money density. Let's read Hero real quick. It's the second to last thing it's the one right before champion.
Yeah.
It's +$2, gain a treasure.
Yeah.
Any treasure at all.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You could gain platinum.
Yeah, platinum is I mean the standard is gold obviously, but it's better when you can gain something better than gold.
Yeah. Pretty hot.
Platinum is the usual culprit there.
Yeah. Platinum is actually better than gold most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
So you already have encampment. Oh wait.
So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we talked about draw. We talked about extra gains or some payload in excess of the province. Those are the reasons that Page breaks the game. Without them, Page can be good, but it doesn't break the game. It just kind of bends it a little. Yeah.
That's very colorful.
But you usually need to go for it.
Also does not fit into my fanfic at all. Why did you do this?
Sorry. But you also usually need to go for it even then, right?
Well, yeah, Hero's pretty good.
And even not Hero, even when Page doesn't seem broken, well, there's a card in the tree that is attack and draw. So Page brings to the table the reasons that you need Page.
Sure. So you're talking about Warrior?
Yeah, it's the one right before Hero.
Yeah, let's read that. So it's the middle child, right?
Yeah.
There's Page, Treasure Hunter, then Warrior, then Hero, then Champion. So the Warrior's in the middle. It's the 4 costs. It's an action attack. Traveler, of course, says +2 cards. And then it says, once per Traveler you have in play, including this. Each other player discards the top card of their deck and trashes it if it costs 3 or 4.
Okay, so that means that if you, let's say the one card Kingdom of Page, like there's nothing else on the board except for Page, then you're like, well, why would the attack immunity ever matter? Well, I mean, if you don't get a champion out and your opponent does, and they get a bunch of warriors, they can be playing a bunch of warriors on you, and each one reveals and trashes more cards because they're travelers and they count each other. So there is always, in any given Page game, even if there are no other attacks, there's still an incentive to go for champion because there is the threat of being spammed with warriors. Now, given that's not as devastating as something like Knights, because the price range is smaller that it can hit.
Yeah, but like if I'm playing a bunch of warriors, I'm kind of hoping for a similar effect on your deck.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it's not hitting 5ers and 6ers, but it is hitting 3s and 4s. Sometimes that matters a lot, sometimes you don't care at all. But it's usually a threat that is at least worth having the presence of mind toward. And understanding that, if you don't get champion, you are kind of on the clock to that at least.
I mean, even without any other support, the guy who goes for Page and champion is going to have the champion out and could be playing potentially up to 5 warriors a turn. Every traveler has 5 copies. Everything Page has 10 copies in the pile, but all the rest of these have 5 copies. So if you don't do anything about it, they could get up to 5 warriors, but really, I mean, each warrior could be trying to hit you multiple times. So, like, they could just be going through your deck and pretty much trashing everything you have that costs 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I mean, some decks can still operate without anything that costs 3 or 4, some can't.
But now you have to build a deck that can operate. Yeah. So if I'm playing just money, I would get more golds than normal.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because the silvers are gonna be gonzo.
Yeah.
Okay, so, like, let's say even that's not a threater. I mean, that strategy is really slow, right? That's weak as a strategy because it takes a long time to set that up. In the meantime, they've been playing Treasure Hunters, which put a bunch of silver in their deck, which is a good card, but not helping them do the warrior spam thing. That's usually not without some support. That's not a threat by itself that mandates champion. Let's say that's not a threat. You usually still go for Page, and why is that?
Well, I mean, Hero's still pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, the opportunity cost is
basically
not super high,
non-existent. I'd say almost.
I mean, if you're playing money, you give up a silver.
But you get the silver. You don't even give up a silver. You delay having a silver for a turn because the Treasure Hunter is gonna probably give you a silver. So you play Page, and then it becomes Treasure Hunter. It just takes another couple of turns to get that silver.
Yeah, it's certainly not that awful. It's not so bad that it's not worth going for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, the only time that the Page tree is, like, actively bad, I'd say, is when gaining treasures is bad, is when gaining the treasure with Hero is bad for gold, and gaining a bunch of silvers with Treasure Hunter is bad.
I guess,
just
but
not
like
terribly often.
I mean, even in those decks, I mean, we talked about this in our episode about when yellow equals purple, but like a lot of decks like that would still be pretty well served by putting a champion out and not having to worry about actions anymore. So that seems pretty narrow. I mean, I used to think that like, oh, you're gaining treasures, and that's gonna slow your champion down, and so it's worse. And like, I mean, maybe that's true, but that doesn't mean it's worse. Like, champion's busted, man.
I mean, and plus, like, champion, if there's any draw on the board, champion then appreciates having the treasures in the deck because it's more payload it can draw.
Well, there is draw on the board because there's warrior.
Sure, I mean, if there's other more accessible, better draw.
Yeah, I mean, warrior is not great draw, but if you're desperate for something that says something attack on it, and you're desperate for something to increase your hand size, it'll get the job done.
So, like, the reason that Treasure Hunter is a card that sometimes people are scared to play, and like, Treasure Hunter is the part of the Page tree that can actually have a negative impact on your deck, because like, it's pretty narrow that 1 or 2 silvers would be bad, but it's not so narrow that a glut of silvers would be bad. There are plenty of decks where I don't want my 8th silver. That's bad. Because your 2nd or 3rd silver are a lot better for you than your 8th silver. And, like, Treasure Hunter can get to the point where it's gaining, like, crazy, ridiculous amounts of silver that you probably don't actually want at that point. Partially because the game has advanced to the point where you have better cards to be drawing in your deck, and partially just because, you know, they are stop cards, and it just means that you have to get more draw.
Man,
so,
I'm going to say that's extremely narrow. I don't think I've ever seen that happen, ever.
I have had it happen. It is narrow. I have gotten screwed over because I played a Treasure Hunter and didn't pay attention to how many cards my opponent gained, and suddenly I had 10 silvers in my deck from that one Treasure Hunter. I'm like, I had not planned for this.
You were just Slay the Spire, just clicking buttons.
Yeah. I am not overdrawing by 10. So...
Yeah, but it's silver, man. Silver's fine.
Well...
It's not that bad.
It
Don't be a
depends
wimp.
on a lot. So... But here's the thing. That does not mean that Treasure Hunter actually like has a net negative impact on your deck usually, because usually you're playing Treasure Hunter like early-ish in the game to gain like 1 or 2 silvers. So like, don't be afraid of Treasure Hunter. It's probably not going to hurt you.
Hey, let me read that card real quick.
Oh yeah, did we not do that?
No. It's Treasure Hunter. It's a 3-cost action. It's a Traveler. It says +1 action, +$1. Gain a silver per card the player to your right gained on their last turn.
Yeah, and actually Treasure Hunter is a big part of the reason that Page has such a low opportunity cost. Is because it comes with a silver, basically. The silver's delayed, but like...
Well, silver's a fine card.
Yeah. I mean, the big takeaway I have to this is that in addition to being sometimes mandatory because of Champion, there's usually no reason not to go for Page, right?
I guess not. It's kind of a weird statement.
I'm just talking about the reasons you go for Page so often.
Sure, I can talk about reasons that we do go for Page.
Yeah.
Yeah. Champion's busted.
That's reason number 1.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, are there any cases where like Treasure Hunter by itself, like would I ever stop on Treasure Hunter? I mean, we talked about stopping on Hero. We talked about stopping on Warriors when you already have a champion and you want to draw cards and attack. Would I stop on Treasure Hunter ever?
Well, there are some odd cases, but let's clarify for a second first that stopping on Warrior is the most common one you would do, because when you have a champion out, +2 cards is like the best generic bonus in that tree usually.
Yeah.
Occasionally, stopping on Hero is good, because usually it's because it can gain platinums. Sometimes it's because Keep is in the game or whatever.
Maybe you just want some payload, man.
It's because you're drawing a ton from other places, and it is a very fast scaling payload. Stopping on Treasure Hunter is rare, but not never.
I don't think I've ever seen a game where it's been a good idea.
It's narrow, but I'm talking about gimmicky things where Treasure Hunter is busted. I'm talking about specific things like Triumph or Conquest or like Theoden shenanigans.
I don't think any of those are all that good.
I mean, those are things that like, I mean, you don't want to ignore them when they're strong. Like, they are things that will occasionally lose you games if you sleep on them entirely.
Yeah, if you misplay, it'll lose you the game. But, like, if you see your opponent going for something like that, then just get a province every turn, and you win.
Well, unless you don't. Because, like, it can gain you a bunch of points really quickly, is the thing.
Only if your opponent, only if it's enabled.
You gain that one... But, like, the thing is, like, they built that deck, they can get provinces, too, so it's not like your deck
They're going to be worse at it because you stopped on Treasure Hunter.
I mean, they have a bunch of silver, too, though, so...
Nice.
It's pretty good at getting provinces. I'm just saying...
But how much silver are you really going to have if I don't let you have all that silver?
I mean, enough, some. I'll get some, for sure.
I don't think... strategies that revolve around Treasure Hunter as means of getting mass silver for any kind of reason, like Conquest or whatever.
I'm not advocating.
I don't think that's ever worth going for.
Okay, that's
can be shut down so easily.
I'm not.
Design me a kingdom where it's actually good.
I can do it. I promise. I'm not.
Spoiler alert. He thinks the kingdom we're talking about at the end of this, you actually want to do that. So we'll argue. I guess we'll argue about it then, huh?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's garbage.
I mean,
hot, steamy, delicious garbage.
Sweet.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's Treasure Hunter.
That's Treasure Hunter.
And maybe Gardens? That falls under all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen Gardens happen. I've seen the other three. So, other than... We can talk about playing the page game, right? Like how the execution of it, how do you play with this card on the board? But other than get champion out as soon as possible and play a bunch of cards, there's not a whole lot of nuance to go over, right?
That's definitely the overall goal. I mean, I'm going to look for some kind of payload that justifies going for the champion for sure. We've talked about that. We're looking at things that the page line doesn't do well all by itself. We talked about draw. I mean, it can draw with warriors, but it's not super great at it. I think the other big thing is trashing. Page gains cards, and it does not trash cards. Everything in the page line, that's what it does, and that's what it doesn't do. And so trashing, is a nice complement to a deck that wants to use champion, because champion doesn't already do it. But also, we talked about the importance of getting your champion out ASAP, and that involves playing the travelers in that line as much as possible, as quickly as possible.
So cycling.
Yeah, we talked about that in the cycling episode. We called it cycling. But in that episode, we did mention that the strongest form of cycling, that benefit, is trashing.
Yeah, usually.
So if I don't have many other cards in my deck, I could feasibly play the Traveler I have every single turn. And that's really the fastest you could ever expect to play your Travelers. So, having a thin deck makes that more realistic. That's definitely something that I want.
So that brings us kind of to the point of the decisions you make before you get the champion out, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because a deck that has champion out, like we said, is playing a completely different game from a deck that doesn't. It's getting different cards, it has different priorities, and so it builds differently. And there's a point in a page game where you're kind of close to having a champion, or you have one out, where you start building that way, where you stop building a quote-unquote #normal Dominion deck, and you start understanding that you have champion. The biggest example, the most extreme example is that I'm never buying Village again, and I'm buying Smithy every chance I get, stuff like that. When do you shift gears and start building your deck as if you have the champion out?
And I would definitely say that depends a lot on the presence of trashing.
Sure.
If I'm able to trash down, then it makes a lot more sense for me to get the champion online first. Because I have a thin deck. I don't need draw in order to play the Travelers, get the champion first.
Yeah.
And so I have the freedom to build in such a way where I'm very thin. I have maybe just a couple of treasures, so I can buy maybe a couple of cards when the time is right. But I don't have to put more cards in my deck than I can draw every single turn until the champion's out. And then at that point, I can start to expand my payload and my drop very quickly.
Okay, that's true, and that's kind of in a perfect world, I'd say.
When the trashing is strong enough that I can do that, then that is one end of the spectrum.
But a lot of the time,
where I can build that way.
Yeah, a lot of the time, once you have the champion out, it would become the case that that trashing isn't always even worth it at that point, because draw is so strong usually, because terminal draw becomes not terminal draw.
I guess.
Well, what I'm saying is that there is a bit of a sort of risk-reward dynamic to when you start shifting into the mode of I'm just shoving a bunch of smithies into this deck versus
Yeah.
I'm playing a normal deck that is not enabled by champion yet, and I need to get champion in play. Versus when I have champion in play, I want to have already started building that deck, so I already have a bunch of smithies or Margarets or whatever it is that I'm drawing a ton of.
Right. So, you definitely, unless the trashing is super strong, you want to be prepared for your champion when she arrives, right? And that means you want to have all these terminal cards that you can't play until the champion is there.
Yeah, right? And so it gives you a question of, like, how conservative do you want to be? Do you want to literally wait until you have your champion to start building like you have champion? Or do you start doing that sooner and get a head start on getting the champion out and then having an amazing champion deck?
So without strong trashing, you definitely jump the gun. The less trashing there is, I would say, the more you jump the gun by.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of down to personal risk tolerance too, because
actually, I don't even think it is. Like, I'm very averse to risk, but like, I feel like you definitely just have to go YOLO on this one.
I kind of agree. I mean, there's the
really,
yeah.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, but there's the aspect of, I mean, there's the risk you're taking, which is that you shove all these terminals in the deck, and then you draw these smithies. And you don't have your champion in play yet, and you can't play these smithies now.
Don't play the smithies.
It's not worth risking drawing your Traveler deck. It sets you so far back. Yeah. But whereas, I mean, putting the smithy in the deck in the first place was a bad call. If you did it too early, so that you draw it too many times like that. So when is the point where you do start shoving the terminals in like that?
Yeah, I would say the earliest I would consider doing something like that is when I have the hero in the deck. And that's the absolute earliest.
I've done it a little earlier, but, I mean, I don't know that I was right. But, so, yeah, I mean, it can... Where you find your champion in the shuffle really comes down to how rewarded you are for that risk.
How much skill you have.
How much of your shuffle luck you made today.
Yeah, how you're able to force the champion to the top of the shuffle
with sheer force of will. Yeah, cheating.
Yeah. Don't cheat.
Yeah. So usually I think Adam's
usually trash.
What Adam said is about what I go by is the shuffle when I have the hero is when I start pretending I have a champion out and just shoving terminals in the deck.
Yeah, and that's I mean. I would say when you have weak trashing or no trashing, and let's say you decide you still want champion, I mean, you are building a much different deck, because what you need is a high quantity of these type of draw cards in your deck. You need a high quantity of smithies in your deck, because not only do you need to play a large number of them in order to draw all of these cards you haven't trashed.
You need to find one in your starting hand.
Yes, you need to have enough of them that you're able to kick off on a high enough percentage of hands. And yes, this deck feels very bad to build, at least for me. I mean, maybe for you feel
no
different. Oh, okay. No. It feels bad to build.
It's painful.
It feels like a bad deck, but champion is so busted that you just have to go for it.
Yeah, you feel like you're making bad decisions and you're drawing cards and choosing not to play them, and it's just.
But if you find your champion at the top of a shuffle or your hero at the top of a shuffle, then it feels great. Because now first of all, you're very skilled, and you're going to get your Traveler. It's not going to miss a shuffle. But also, you are free to play the rest of those cards just to get to the end of the shuffle faster.
And this is why I hate this card.
That's one of two things that I think people really, really hate about this card. And for me, it's the big one.
And where your Traveler is in a shuffle, there's the obvious thing of it missing the shuffle and cycling leveling up more slowly, a lot more slowly.
That's so bad.
It's really bad, but there's also the aspect of what Adam just said with Champion in particular, and you get this a little bit with Teacher with the plus action token, is you shoved all these terminals in the deck because that was probably the best way to build. But if your champion is late to the party, then you are shuffling way slower, so your opponent who drew it at the top isn't just ahead by that one shuffle. They're shuffling a lot faster and getting a lot more out of their turns because they had the champion out and they started building their champion deck, and they get to start running it a few turns before you.
That can happen when you're on the way there, and then
There's something
when you
even
have
worse.
when you have the champion in your deck, if it's at the top of your deck, you can just go right away. And if it's at the bottom of your deck, you're sitting there for 3 turns with your thumb up your butt, and you're just kind of waiting for absolutely no reason.
And the worst
your
part,
opponent is just doing other things. And then there's the one that, like, I mean, this is the one that really gets my blood boiling.
This is one that I honestly say I think this was a mistake that should have been caught in playtesting, and I'm kind of mad that it wasn't.
I'm gonna agree, and I even playtested this expansion.
The warrior can trash warrior, and warrior can mill hero and mill champion. And if your opponent has their champion out, they probably also have a warrior in their deck because they probably got more than one page. And they this can happen by sheer first player advantage. They can just like have their champion out and play warrior and mill your champion and delay you from kicking off for even longer in a shuffle. So let's say you even both got the same amount of like shuffle luck and your champion is like in the same position. They go first and mill your champion. Not anymore, it's not. LOL. I hate this card so much.
Yeah, warrior can cause some blowouts, right?
Yeah.
I think that's warrior's real main function. Is it just cheeses wins? Because if my warrior hits your warrior, usually enough of a setback that it's GG.
I mean, it can be. Like, the thing is, you usually have a second page as a backup anyway.
It's important to get, like, multiple pages. Second, maybe third.
I mean, because, like, the warrior hitting warrior, that only matters if like, that warrior was way farther ahead than the other traveler you have because of shuffle missing or what have you. Or it matters if it was your only one.
Yeah. So that's one real danger. But yeah, also, I mean, you can skip the other ones too. Skipping champion, I would say, is pretty bad. I mean, it's kind of equivalent to making a miss the shuffle, but all of these things are really, really awful, and you don't really have any control of any of them other than to just thin your deck.
Yeah, that's the part of this that I think is the real cardinal sin. And, like, don't get me wrong, we've talked before about how luck is all in all good for the game, but, like, not this kind of luck because it's such a feel-bad kind, and that's subjective. But you have no counterplay to any of this. You don't have, other than, like, getting a moat or something, which actually moat's a pretty good card on the champion board, but well, whatever. It's, like, so...
Man, I would just spam more pages, really. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could see myself putting a moat in the deck at some point. But anyway.
Sure.
You have so little counterplay, and there's so little that's actually in your control that, I mean, I don't have data on this or anything, but, like, if this turns out to be...
But we have confirmation bias.
Yeah, if this turns out to be, like, a really... I don't know. I don't think that...
Dominion's supposed to be fun, and this, like, just knees me in the gut when it comes to fun.
I think that...
I've had enough games that are decided that way that I don't need to carry Page around in my box anymore.
I mean, I like Page to show new players because it's thematic and it's neat. But not every new player. If it's a new player who I know is like a design junkie who like really appreciates elegant and not necessarily fair because that term is subjective, but like elegant, sort of tight game design, I'm gonna show them lots of other cards in Dominion before I bring out Page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were pretty disciplined. I mean, we saved that to the end. For
the
most part, yeah.
We also haven't bickered yet. We didn't talk about how much the attack immunity means.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So we should talk about attacks because Champion also does that.
Yeah.
I think attacks still matter a lot, even with Champion out. I mean, Warrior obviously matters because, you know, a lot of the Warriors are going to be played, and we've whined about that.
I mean, I think they matter less. I think they still matter.
Well, I mean, Warrior always matters the same amount because it always comes with Champion. But
well, I'm talking about other attacks in the kingdom.
That's meaningless.
So, yeah.
Sure.
I don't know. I think other attacks are worse than they would be if Champion wasn't out. because the attack doesn't have the long-term prospect of slowing your opponent down throughout the rest of the game. Except for junking attacks, they do.
There's the relationship between trashing and junking. If they're both present and they're at odds with each other, I definitely will prefer trashing, because I can just keep trashing and keep trashing, get my champion out, and now the trashing is not only helping me get my champion out faster, but it kind of takes away any long-term effect that junking has, and it takes any sort of like threat of continued junking. Like, I just don't care about any of that. I would rather just trash all my cards, right? It's very rare that I'm gonna want to do a junking attack at the expense of more thinning for myself.
Yeah.
With that said, the junking attacks definitely do matter. If I can get junking and trashing, sure, I'd like to do that. And especially if there is no trashing, the junking definitely matters quite a lot.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not looking at these attacks much differently.
I don't... So, like, it's really hard to get into this without a kingdom in front of us.
Ooh.
But...
We could put a kingdom in front of us.
We could do that.
Yeah.
How
about this one?
Alright. The kingdom we're going to be playing with has Lurker, Page, Doctor, Forager, Guide, Oasis, Ranger, Sea Hag, Bandit Camp, Mint. It has the event Conquest and the landmark Wolf Den. Once more, for our audio-only listeners, we have Lurker, Page, Doctor, Forager, Guide, Oasis, Ranger, Sea Hag, Bandit Camp, Mint. We have the event Conquest, and we have the landmark Wolf Den. So
I think champion's very important here. Yes.
Yeah.
Would you consider getting 2 champions because of Wolf Den?
No. And so I would also... It's just not enough points to warrant giving up a warrior.
I don't know, maybe.
Probably not.
Definitely not.
I doubt it. Yeah.
I don't think I care.
So, Ranger right off the bat is extra gains and draw. Those are the 2 things that are... Though either one of those is like, okay, I need to go for champion, and we have both in 1 card, so...
Well, there's also trashing.
There's also trashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, champion has basically all the support it could want here, and it also, is good.
Yeah, so, there's a junking attack, too, and...
Hey, Sea Hag.
I don't know. I think you'd be skipping Sea Hag either way here.
Right, I agree.
Because it's not worth going for.
No bueno.
So
I think, our goal is to get champion in play as quickly as possible, for sure.
Yeah, and then at that point have a bunch of Rangers in play as well.
I think I want to open with Page, and I want to open with something that trashes cards.
Yeah, so I think the ideal open would be Page Mint. I think this is one of the few cases where a Mint opening is quite good.
Yeah, there's 2 cards that really do it, and Fool's Gold and Page are at the top of the list.
Yeah.
There's Alms, but, you also need a little bit of support there.
Sure.
But if the success of my turn is measured primarily in terms of did I get to play my Traveler,
yeah,
then Mint is great, because it helps a lot with that. And it doesn't matter if I'm not really buying anything with the 2 coppers that are left in my deck. Mm-hmm. I can get more pages. I can gain silvers with my Treasure Hunter and eventually be able to do something productive. Buy a Forager, get rid of the estates pretty quickly with that.
So that's the ideal case. Let's talk about what you do on the more likely case of a 3/4 4/3 on a...
I'm just going to say that the Mint opening, I think, even outclasses opening with a Doctor on $5.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think it's better.
I agree with that.
But yeah, if you get 3/4 or 4/3...
I think that on a 4/3, you go Page Forager, and on a 3/4, you go Page Doctor. And the reason that the order matters is because it determines the Doctor overpay, causing the Page to miss the shuffle or not. And I think it's a big enough deal that you play around that.
So, I kind of want Doctor in my deck regardless of the opening. And if I'm really concerned about the page missing the shuffle, then I would just not overpay when I get the Doctor.
Well, sure, but I mean, at that point, I mean, I do want the Doctor in the deck too. I slightly prefer it, but like, I don't know. Do I slightly prefer it? Forager's fine. It trashes from hand. It's more likely to trash estates for me. And like, I understand that you really just want to get thin here, so estates versus coppers isn't a huge deal. But the coppers do help you buy things.
Yeah, the one thing I'm concerned with buying is Forager, and it only costs 3. And if I'm having that much trouble, that means I've trashed so many coppers with Doctor that I'm happy. Or, you know, I can just get the Treasure Hunter Silver, and that's going to help me.
I want to buy Rangers, you know, sooner rather than later.
Sure, but I'm going to probably have some of my estates thinned by that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there will be coppers in the trash. The Forager will help me with that.
So then we get into, as we move through the page tree, we move toward the mid-game and the end game. What are we doing? I mean, there's plus buy and there's payload. And
I want lots of Rangers, that's for sure.
I want lots of Rangers. I'm actually thinking I want to have 2 Treasure Hunters in my deck. And I probably want to be threatening Conquest turns. Don't get me wrong, I'm not hard committing to scoring all my points with Conquest and Treasure Hunter and everything. That deck I'm describing has a champion in play, and it has Rangers, and it has a bunch of Silvers, and it has the option of scoring a bunch of points with Conquest. It also has the option of going for Provinces. So I kind of want to be scoring with Conquest because it doesn't make my deck worse, really. I can probably deal with having those Silvers, and I have access to more points than if you don't.
Yeah, I don't think I'm keeping Treasure Hunters for this purpose. I don't think it's good.
I mean, I think I'm getting extra pages so that I can have Treasure Hunters.
I'll get extra pages so I can have Warriors, and so I can have redundancy if my Warriors get hit. I mean, you want multiple pages, but I'm gonna make them into Warriors. Or if I really, really want more payload, a Hero I think is gonna do a better job for me. I don't want to stay on Treasure Hunter.
I don't know. I think it's pretty good, but because I mean, I now have the option of getting these Conquest points that you don't, and I don't think your deck is that much better than mine. Not at provincing.
I mean, I can get provinces too.
Yeah, I know. I can get provinces too. I can also do conquests. You can't do that.
Well, yeah, I can, but
they're worse.
They're worse, but I mean, I'm also getting provinces faster, and I have control over how good your conquest can reasonably be.
Well, that's the thing is like I don't think you're actually going to get them a ton faster. You're gonna be beelining toward them, so you're gonna be getting them faster. Yes, I don't think you're gonna get them as much faster as it would be to matter that I just have this extra source of points.
Yeah, I'm not sold. I don't think it's good. Leave a comment in the comments section.
I bet it's good.
I mean, maybe... No, I don't think it is.
I bet it is.
Good for you, man. I'm really happy for you. I also wanted to say that, I mean, in the case of this kingdom, it was easy. We didn't want the attack. It's a bad junking attack when there's an abundance of trashing.
Yeah.
I don't know that we sufficiently bickered about how good we think attacks are in terms of champion. I don't really know that we got that satisfaction. I know there is a disagreement.
Yeah, there is one, but like we were talking about this earlier, and the situation where we disagree is
no trashing.
Is so contrived.
Let's say it was this board but with no trashing. So like goodbye Dr. Forager Mint, and we have 3 stacks of Scout on the board. Are you going for Sea Hag?
Okay.
Because I definitely am. There's no way to trash curses. I mean, yes, the champion is there, but like, I'm gonna get enough curses in to first of all slow your champion down.
Here's the thing: well, you're possibly slowing my champion down.
But the curses are around forever, and they have a permanent effect on your deck. So.
But your Sea Hag is also around forever. I'm saying you're coming out ahead here. Because you gave me more curses with more bad cards with the Sea Hag than you took by getting the Sea Hag.
That Sea Hag has sentimental value. Don't you tell me that she is worthless. when you have the champion out.
She's literally worthless when I have the champion out.
Jake, have you seen the art?
You've
seen the art for Sea Hag, you've seen the art for champion. I'm telling you who I prefer right now.
I have guide to get me to pay champion faster, and I think that I'm skipping Sea Hag in that case.
I have guide to help me play my Sea Hag faster.
Sure, man. But, like, speeding it up helps me, not you. Careening toward the game, cycling faster for both of us helps me, not you in that case.
Oh, it's like a...
I guess it's a net neutral, all things being equal.
Is it? I mean, if it happened the exact same way every time, which it never ever will, because that's not how Dominion works.
Yeah, that's not how probability or anything works, but yeah. Okay.
Man, playtesting these kingdoms would be a lot easier if it was.
Yeah, you could actually do a sim, and like a lot of these things that we bicker about, there would actually be an answer, because there would be an objectively true thing rather than just qualitative differences between the situation you're in.
It's close, hand waving.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right, well, let us know what you do. Let us know if you think Conquest is relevant here, and not just relevant as in, like, this is something I can go for. Let me know if you think it's, like, a legitimate source of points that competes with provinces.
Yeah, I think the main disagreement here is, would you keep treasure hunters? Yeah.
For the purpose of threatening conquests more effectively.
Sure, yeah. I think that's the main source of disagreement here. Yeah. So, yeah, leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just leave a comment there. If you are not, thank you. But also, you can go to adamhorton.com. There's forums there, links to our contact information, and our Discord channel, where you can talk at us about this kingdom. You're going to have a while to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be at least 2 weeks and possibly even more until the next full episode where we would address this kingdom. So there's going to be plenty of time I would say, for us to play test, but, I mean, the reason we're not having episodes is partially because I'm going to be off the grid, and then partially because, I don't know, we may not be in a state to be recording episodes 2 weeks from now.
Sure.
For various reasons. So, I mean, of course, we're not going to commit to when that is, but maybe someday there'll be another episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
Hopefully I live through this. Hopefully Jake lives through it.
Yeah, I mean, being away from Adam, I don't think I've ever been away from Adam for this long.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, you live in the pool.
Yeah.
The inflatable pool right there.
Thanks for my pool, by the way.
It's really nice to sleep in. It's roomy, and it gives you that, like, cocoon womb kind of feel.
Yeah, because you're floating in liquid.
And it's
I'm usually looking for that sensation of floating in liquid.
Sensory deprivation.
Well, no, it's not sensory deprivation.
Yeah, but you could make it into that, though, is what I'm saying.
You could, and that would be an interesting punishment, but...
Punishment? Or relaxation?
Punishment.
Future mythical episode of the podcast.
Of ASMR.
Thanks for listening to Making Luck, an ASMR podcast. An ASMR podcast.
I just think it's crazy that you blew that thing up by hand. Like, they have pumps for that, but you just, like, pretended it was a balloon and blew it up.
Well, I mean, we ordered a pump. We ordered an air mattress that came with a compatible pump, but I didn't know when she would want to use it, so I...
So that's all just your breath?
Yeah.
In that?
Yeah.
And how long did this take?
Multiple hours, and I had to take a lot of breaks because I would just get dizzy.
I think, like, you can... I want to say you can probably die doing that. Like, there's got to be some way you can
die doing anything.
Well, okay, true. But there's got to be some way that can cause an aneurysm or something.
You can die playing Dominion.
You could.
I wonder if anyone's ever died playing Dominion.
Let us know in the comments if you've died playing it. All right. So,
Nice.
Yeah. So, are you gonna go swimming in your basement?